Very, very
Of
interesting.
course.
So you came on board with the certification. Did they have to pitch it to you, or did they just wave the certification topic at you and you said, sure, I'll do it?
Yeah, I have some fun with that. Once we went live in '84, we got a note from PMI headquarters that said that you can't take the exam for 10 years. We thought we'd get grandfathered in, and instead we got to wait 10 years, which we all thought was a little bit ridiculous.
So
but
you
we
had to
didn't have
wait
a
10
choice.
years until you could take a certification that you actually
Yeah.
created?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. And so we waited, and almost to the day on 10 years, I got a letter saying, so you're okay to take the exam now. And I go, wow, it's been a while. Maybe I should go back and study. So I did. I studied for 2 or 3 hours, and sat for the exam in Altamont Springs with a bunch of AT&T people, and passed. I got 100% on the exam.
No.
Back then it was 320 questions, not 200. And so I'm pretty excited.
And back in your day, even back in my day when I did the PMP, the PMBOK was fairly thin, but you had like this compendium of books, 12 or 15 books that you could theoretically read. There was a Kurtzner book, a couple other books that were recommended reading to be able to cover the scope of the questions.
Yeah, that's still pretty much the same, except the PMBOK grew to 800 pages for PMBOK 6. Yeah. So when they went to 7 and pulled a bunch of stuff out, it's more like 300 pages. But they also then provide you a list of 10 or 12 items that you should be studying to prepare for the exam. And even though it's only 200 questions, it's a bitch of an exam. It's tough.
And I think every time they roll out a new version, it doesn't get easier. I mean, it kind of evens out again, and then it comes back to about the same level. But I think until people get a concept of what the new, I think sometimes they kind of just reshuffle the Rubik's Cube, and that makes it a little bit confusing for
I agree.
purposes.
I agree with that. I think it creates a perception of change.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. So did you, when they asked you to create the certification program, you obviously sat down and looked at the PMBOK, probably like for the first time, right?
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. What was your how big was it? What, 200 pages or 150 pages?
Well, the thing is, you have to remember is that there really wasn't a PMBOK until '96.
Okay.
An official published PMBOK. So from '84 to '96, you're flying by the seat of your pants.
So the first PMBOK came out in '96, you said?
'96 was the first published edition of the PMBOK.
And you guys created the PMP certification in?
And we created it in '81 to '84. That was the time frame.
Oh, I didn't even realize. So you guys had certification long before you had the PMBOK.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that. They keep thinking that, well, once you got the PMBOK. Well, we didn't have a PMBOK for 12 years. I mean,
how did that? This makes it even more interesting. How did you how did you guys define scope of learning?
Mostly from senior level people that have been around a long time.
Like common sense.
Had
a couple of years.
They didn't need a PMBOK. They just knew that's what you did.
Yeah.
And so we had guys like Max Weidman out in Canada, out on the west coast of Canada. He was participating. A couple guys that subsequently were excommunicated from PMI for plagiarism and some things that probably weren't true at the time.
Okay.
But basically, it was all volunteer stuff. And so when we made up the first exam that we rolled out in '84 in Philly, it was just a compendium of volunteer questions. People that were in the business suggested questions. And so that's how we got started. Now, of course, it's still suggestions by volunteers, but now it's much more formal. PMI actually has paid people who create the exams and so on. So it's gotten much more professional in the way we do.
Were you in it? Was the team that created the PMP certification in any form, I don't know, in the steering committee or in the stakeholder circle that around the PMBOK development as well?
Not as much. Again, they were trying to avoid any crossover
Conflict of interest.
of interest.
Yeah.
And so I don't think many of us, I certainly wasn't me, were directly involved in the first PMBOK. It was only 119 pages, so it wasn't like big deal. Yeah, that again, all volunteer. And the reason it grew to 800 is the same reason. All the volunteers who wanted their name on the back page and said I contributed.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I did. You might not know this about me, but I was the chapter proponent and chapter president of PMI chapter Austria. So the founding father for about 10 years, and I always understood that. You know what? I think a community of practice is all about, sharing, and it's nonprofit, and you need to watch out for conflict of interest. I'm a big fan of that. But I think if you have volunteers that are going to contribute, I think you should hold their name up high. And that's one of the things I really like about what I see how PMI is treating you, because I know a lot of people who did a lot of things for PMI that, that worked as a volunteer for PMI for 10, 20 years, and you don't hear of them anymore. And I find it a pity. I think I'm a big fan of giving credit where credit is due, and remembering the founding fathers, as you may, of an organization, because they're doing this on their free time, and the least thing that you can do is give them recognition. So I'm very happy every time I see you donning PMI, and PMI puts your name out there. I said finally they're doing more of that. I think that's great.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation, because basically when I negotiated this arrangement with PMI, that was really at the heart of what I was doing. I started out by just congratulating everyone who got their PMP on LinkedIn, get their name out there, let people know.
And you should. That's another way of giving back.
That. And so it's kind of morphed from that to basically I'm now a sort of an unofficial ambassador. For PMI, and the more I can expose people as opposed to organizations, the better I like it.
And it's all about people. I remember my first. We weren't even a full chapter yet, but our first meeting was in Philadelphia, and I remember the spirit back then. It was so great. It had this classical parliament type thing, where all chapter presidents were involved, and all the brainstorming of where PMI should go globally was something that was discussed openly amongst chapter presidents. And I think it's another example of how a volunteer organization should have inclusive concepts and like I said, I also think if somebody's gonna commit to your certification and get a PMP, don't let them. I mean, not that it's that expensive, but don't let them just get the certification and then after that you never hear from them. Say thank you, put their name out there. It's also part of social media. This, promoting each other, I think, is an important thing.